Hello, and welcome to Once Upon a Time in Black History. I'm your host, Tamara Shiloh, author, educator, and owner of the Multicultural Bookstore in Richmond, California. I've started a new podcast that can be heard on Anchor, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Check us out and be sure to visit my website at onceuponatimeInBlackHistory.com. On this episode of Once Upon a Time in Black History, I'll be sharing information with you about the life of Ms. Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman to receive her pilot's license. Okay, let's get started. Ms. Bessie Coleman was born in Atlanta, Texas. Yes, there's an Atlanta in Texas. She was born on January 26, 1892, and she had 12 brothers and sisters. Her mother was Susan Coleman. She was an African-American maid, and her dad was George Coleman. He was a sharecropper, and he was Native American and African-American. So the story goes that in 1901, her father decided that he wanted to move back to Oklahoma. His goal was to try to get away from slavery and discrimination. Well, Bessie's mother decided that she did not want to go with him. So she and the family stayed in Texas. Okay, Bessie grew up helping her mother pick cotton and wash laundry so she could earn some extra money. She was a very focused young lady. And by the time she was 18, well, she had saved enough money to attend the Colored Agricultural and Normal University, which is now Langston University in Oklahoma. So that was the good news. The bad news is that she had to drop out of college after one semester because she couldn't afford to keep going. Okay, so now it was time for a new plan. So she decided to live with her brothers in Chicago. She got there, she got settled in, and then started thinking, okay, I need to get a job. So in 1915, she decided on the Burnham School of Beauty Culture and became a manicurist, and she started working in a local barbershop. She really enjoyed living with her brothers. They always had stories. Her brothers served in the military during World War I and always had stories to share about France and how the French women had so many more opportunities than the women in the United States, especially black women. They would often tell her how they were even able to fly airplanes. Well, that was enough for Bessie, so she decided she wanted to become a pilot. This is where the next chapter in her life would begin. She set out on her journey to become an airline pilot, but she discovered that no school would take her because she was black and a woman. This is where her blessing started also, because Robert Abbott, an African-American newspaper publisher, he heard about her problems with getting a license. So he suggested that she move to France, where she could learn how to fly. He knew that being black and a woman would not be a problem for her there, because he had also heard those stories. However, there was another problem. The applications were in French, and the applications needed to be written in French. So, Bessie being Bessie, she began taking French classes at night. She submitted her application and was accepted at the Cadron Brothers School of Aviation in Le Crotoy, France. She then received her international pilot's license on June 15, 1921, from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. Bessie's dream was to own a plane and to open her own flight school. She really became quite the celebrity. She gave speeches and showed films of her airplane tricks in churches, theaters, schools, and this way she could earn some money. However, there was one thing that she was really adamant about. She refused to speak anywhere that was segregated or discriminated against African Americans. One of her other goals was to encourage women and African Americans to reach their dreams. In 1922, she performed the first public flight by an African American woman. She was famous for doing those loop-the-loops and making the shape of a figure 8 in an airplane. People were fascinated with her and her performances. She was popular here in the United States and in Europe. Bessie kept busy. She toured the country giving flight lessons and performing the flight shows, and as always, encouraging African Americans and women to learn how to fly. But as with most things, it wasn't all glitz and glamour. Only 2 years into her flight career, she survived her first major airplane accident. That was in February of 1923, when her airplane engine just suddenly stopped working and she crashed. She was really badly hurt in the accident. She suffered a broken leg, a few cracked ribs, and cuts on her face. Bessie being Bessie again, she was able to fully heal from her injuries. And of course, the accident didn't stop her from flying. She kept performing dangerous airplane tricks. Another good thing, Bessie's dream of owning her own airplane was now a reality. She purchased a Jenny, and it was a JN4 with an OX5 engine. I'm pretty sure that was pretty cool back then. Bessie was an activist, and she always stood up for black folks whenever she could. So when she returned to her hometown in Texas to perform, there was an issue about black folks and white folks entering the stadium in 2 separate entrances. Bessie wasn't having it, and she refused to fly unless everyone came through the same gate. While they did agree on that, they did not budge about black and whites sitting in separate sections of the stadium. So with that, she agreed to perform. On April 30th, 1926, she took a test flight with a mechanic named William Wills. William was flying the plane, and Bessie sat in the passenger seat. About 3,000 feet in the air, a loose wrench got stuck in the engine, and he was no longer able to control the steering wheel, and the plane flipped over. Unfortunately, Bessie was not wearing a seatbelt. You see, airplanes at that time did not have a roof or any protection. Bessie immediately fell out of the plane, and, of course, she died. Tragic day for the world. And William crashed the aircraft about a few feet away from Bessie's body. Of course, he died as well. Her death was heartbreaking for thousands of people. Ida B. Wells performed a funeral service in Chicago, and in 1931, the Challenger Pilots Association of Chicago started a tradition of flying over Bessie's grave every year. By 1977, African American women pilots formed the Bessie Coleman Aviators Club. And in 1995, the Bessie Coleman stamp was made to remember all of her accomplishments. Now imagine that. It's been fun sharing information with you about Miss Bessie Coleman. If you'd like to read more about Bessie, visit bessiecoleman.org or womenshistory.org. My new podcast will be featuring Black history movers and shakers, past and present. Thanks for tuning in, and let us know what you think about Once Upon a Time in Black History by visiting our website at onceuponatimeinblackhistory.com. Also, if you're looking for a great book to read, I suggest that you visit my bookstore, Multicultural Bookstore and Gifts in Richmond, California. Go to my website at multiculturalbookstore.com. My name is Tamara Shiloh, author and Black history educator. See you next time.